Hey everybody, this is Peter with Tabletop Gaming Guild, and today I'm going to be taking a look at a social deduction card game called M.O.R.P.H.O. It's for 3 to 9 players, plays in about 20 minutes. So if that sounds up your alley, let's go ahead and take the game down to the table and see what it's all about. Let's go ahead and get inside the box and see what we have. All right, so we have our rule book. The rule book is rather short. It is a 21-page rule book, very nicely laid out color-wise, a lot of white space, very easy to read. The font is nice. My only critique here is that the rule book definitely could have used some more editing. There are a lot of errors, not rule errors, but grammatical errors throughout the book, making it a little bit more difficult to read than I would like. A lot of times I was reading a sentence, had to stop myself, rewind, say, okay, that didn't make any sense, and then kind of decipher what the author of the rule book meant. So I wish there had been a little bit better editing of the rule book itself. But if you take the time, you can still understand how the game is meant to be played. And again, that is the final goal. So that is the rule book. We also have here 9 sets of ID ability reference cards. ID ability reference cards. So each player can have 2 ID ability reference cards, and they're double-sided, and they are going to tell each player what the different identities do and how they're going to try to win the game. So these are going to be really helpful. And again, they provide a ton of them since you can play up to 9 players. So if you would have a full table of 9 players, you would make sure to give every player 2 of these cards, making sure that they have the full set so that they can see what all of the identities do. Next, we have a bunch of white and black tokens. These are our victory point tokens. If you get a white token, that's a single victory point. The black tokens are for 5 victory points. And then there is a random blue token in there, and that's just the first player token, which will be passed clockwise around the table until the game ends. So at the beginning of each round, the first player token will move around clockwise. Next, inside the box, we have some colored cubes. 2 of them are going to be utilized for the base game, and that is the 2 black cubes. The 2 black cubes will be utilized in the base game. And after you've played the base game a little bit, if you want to try to up the complexity level of the game, you can try the game on expert level. And then the green, blue, and red cubes will come into play as well. But for the base game, just the 2 black cubes will be utilized. Then we have our playing cards, and there are quite a few, but about half of them are going to again be somewhat of a reference card in and of itself. They're identifying cards. You can tell the difference between those and the rest because all the identifying cards, these just have kind of this gray black background. And what you're going to utilize these for is when you have created your playing deck, you will mimic that by putting another deck together that is exactly the same. And then you'll lay those out up at the top of the table so everybody can have a quick reference as to which cards are being utilized in the playing deck. Next, here are the playing cards themselves. We do have 4 purple cards, 3 green cards. These 7 cards are for the expert level game only. And when you would utilize them, you'd only actually end up utilizing 1 of them possibly. But we'll talk about that in just a little bit. For right now, we're going to set them off to the side. In the base game, you have the killer, you have the deserter, you have the bodyguard, the technician, and the leader. So in a base game of M.O.R.P.H.O, you will just have those 5 possible identities in the deck: the leader, the technician, bodyguard, deserter, and killer. And to figure out exactly what we need to make up a deck, let's take a quick look at our rule book. So our rule book is going to tell us right here on the opening 2 pages of the book what cards we need for the game that we are wanting to play. If we're going to play the basic game, we're going to be looking at pages 1 and 2. If we're going to be playing the expert game, we're going to be looking at pages 3 and 4. And then over here on the left side of each of those pages, it tells us, depending on how many players we have in the game, how many identifying cards each one of those players are going to receive. If you have 3 to 6 players, everybody's going to receive 2 identifying cards. And if you have 7 to 9 players, you're going to receive 1 identifying card. Also then, depending on the number of players you have, this is how many of each of the different types of cards you're going to have in your deck. So to give you an example, if we were going to be playing a 4-player game, we would just have the 1 leader card, the 1 technician card. We would have 1 of the bodyguard cards, 1 killer, and we would have 5 deserter cards. So that right there is the deck we would need to play with for a 4-player game of M.O.R.P.H.O. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at what that would look like setup-wise for the game. We would take this deck, we would shuffle it up, and then each player would receive 2 identifier cards. Again, because we're playing a 4-player game, everybody gets 2 identifying cards. Once everybody has received their 2 identifying cards, you will see that there's going to always be 1 leftover card. It goes into the middle of the table. At this point, each player is going to be able to take a look at the cards in front of themselves to see which identities they are taking on at the beginning of the game. I have been given a deserter and a killer. Depending on the identifiers that they have in front of them, that's going to tell them what their goal is for the game, how they're going to try to win this round. Again, the game is going to be played to a total of 10 victory points, ending the game. You're not going to get 10 victory points in a single round, so you're going to have to play more than likely 3 to 4 rounds before any one person hits the 10 victory point goal, and it could go a little longer than that as well. So there's going to be multiple rounds of the game before the game is finished. Now that we see how the layout works, let's go over a little bit of what actions are available to the players once they're playing the game. So if we go ahead and go into our rule book and take a look at page 11, we can see actions. So on the actions in the gameplay, on a person's turn, they get to do 1 action. And the actions they have to choose from, there are 3. 1 is to investigate. The second action is to change jobs. And the third action is to use ability. We will go over usability last, as that's a little bit more complicated than the other 2. To investigate, all you will need to do to investigate is to look at one of the cards that are not adjacent to you. So the 2 cards that are adjacent to me are here and here. I have the option to investigate the other 4 face down cards on the table. You cannot investigate the center card. You cannot investigate the 2 adjacent cards. All the other cards are available for you to go ahead and flip over, see what is there, and then put it back. You do not let anyone else at the table see what you're looking at. You take a look at it, you put it back onto the table face down. And that is the investigate action. Again, this is a social deduction game. You're trying to figure out what identities the other players have so that you can figure out what their goal is for winning the game. That goal might line up with you and you want to help them win so that you all get victory points, or it might be against you and you want to defeat them so that they don't get any victory points, but you do. So that is the investigate action. Again, the second action is change job. This is relatively simple as well. Maybe you have an identity in front of you that you do not want to have in front of you any longer for one reason or another. You have the option of taking the one card you do not want, putting it into the middle, grab the middle card, put it in front of you. Now you have the ability to look at it and see what it is. You cannot look at the middle card before you decide to take that change job action. Now, if you have been investigating for a few rounds and you have seen somebody else change jobs, you may have seen a card out here that has then been put into the center. At that point, you may have information about what the card is before you change job. But there is the possibility you won't know what's out there and you're just changing anyways. That is the change job action. Now, the last action is the use ability action. There are two types of abilities. There are active abilities and passive abilities. For the use ability action, you will only be utilizing your active abilities. Passive abilities will be in response to somebody else taking an active action. For this, let's go ahead and take a quick look again at the basic 5 cards, and we'll see what active abilities they have and what passive abilities they have, and kind of what they do in the game. So we'll go ahead and flip all of our cards over, and we'll stack those up again. Here we go. So we do have our deserter cards. The deserter cards, as you can see, there are 5 of them here in the 4-player game. They have one active ability, and that is escape. The only way that you can utilize the deserter's active ability of escape is if both of the identity cards in front of you are deserters. If you would have, like this person here, a deserter and a leader, this active ability is not allowed to be utilized. But like we saw here, the player here on the right, they had 2 deserters. They have the option of, on their turn, activating this ability and trying to escape. Once they've activated that ability, then the player to their left has to let them know if they can stop this ability. And the only way to stop that ability is with the passive ability of intercept. The person on the left here does not have that ability on either of their cards. After the person on the left lets us know whether they can stop the deserter or not, the person on the right has to make that decision. And again, it's not really a decision. The ability happens or it doesn't happen. This person on the right does have the bodyguard. They must immediately then flip over their bodyguard, announce that they are intercepting the deserters. The deserters at that point in time are out of the round and lose this round. The bodyguard then flips their card back over, having successfully intercepted the deserters, but again, giving information to the rest of the table as to what they have in their hand. That is the deserters' active action. And now we've also seen how it interacts with the action of interception. Again, that's a passive action. There's only 2 cards in the game, base game, that have that intercept passive action, and that is the bodyguards and the leader. Now, one of the other actions that we have out here on the table is the leader's activate mission. If the player who has the leader card decides to play their action, their job is to try and find the technician. Once the player who has the leader has deduced where the technician is amongst all the face down cards, they can flip their leader card over and activate mission. After then an entire circle of the board has happened, every player has had another turn. If the game has not finished, the leader is then required to identify the technician. If they know where the technician is, they point at the card. That player flips the card over. If it is the technician, success. Anybody who is playing, anybody who has an ID card that is blue, the technician, the leader, or the bodyguards, they have now completed this mission success, and they all are going to get their victory points. The leader here would get 3 victory points. The technician here would get 3. And again, the bodyguard, also a blue card, wanting a mission success, will gain 2 victory points. That is how the activate mission action works. The other action that we have out here, we've got 2 of them, and they're both on the killer card. The killer card, this gets a little bit more complicated, I believe, than some of the other ones, and that is Snipe and Block. The goal of the killer card is either that the mission fails, which again, a mission success is if the leader can successfully locate the technician. So if they can't do that, then missions failed, killer wins. Or the leader is eliminated. And the way that the leader is eliminated is if the killer can successfully use their snipe ability. Now, to use the snipe ability, the player here has to know where the leader is. So hopefully they know where the leader is. And then they also have to be able to snipe the leader. This sniping action will be blocked if either of the adjacent players, or again, the player themselves have another card, if they have a bodyguard. Because if the adjacent player has the bodyguard, they will use their passive ability of guard, which will stop the snipe from happening. And that's the only card that can stop the snipe, is the bodyguard. The way that the killer can do their best to get around that is to first use their block active ability. Block active ability utilizes the 2 black cubes that come in the game. When you block, you are then allowed to take a black cube and place it between 2 players. When that block is placed between 2 players, those 2 players are no longer considered to be adjacent. So then the killer could use their snipe ability. And as long as the other card here is not a bodyguard, then the leader is sniped successfully and the killer has won the game. Again, there are a possibility of 2 of these black cubes, but in a 4-player game, we can see that there is only 1 killer on the board. If you have a higher play count, there are multiple killers on the board. If 1 killer wins, all killers win, and they will gain their victory points. If 1 deserter wins, only that deserter is going to win. The other deserters do not win. They have not successfully escaped. If the leader wins, then the bodyguard and the technician also win. And that is how you play M.O.R.P.H.O. Now, again, the amount of cards can change depending on whether you have more players or not. And if you are to decide that you would like to play the expert level of the game, you would then include 1 of these expert level cards. That comes into play here on page 3 and 4. On the far right-hand side of the column where it shows you which cards you are adding into the deck, you will see that they want you to add 1 unknown card. And to add 1 unknown card, we will go ahead and flip up to the expert mode version of the game here, explaining how you are to add that in. Says it right here, adding unknown ID. Pick any number of outsiders or aliens. The outsiders are the purple cards. The aliens are the green cards. Pick any number of outsiders or aliens to shuffle with 1 deserter card. Need to check the player counts. Some ideas are not available. Draw one and do not check which ID it is. So you're going to choose maybe 3 or 4 of these cards and put in a deserter card as well. You will then shuffle these cards together, randomly choosing one of the cards, and you will mix that one card in with the rest of the deck. So now you have basically a regular basic set of cards, except also the possibility of one of the expert cards. Because you do mix in that one deserter card, there is still the chance that you end up not having any of the expert cards in the game as well. So that's why it's an unknown factor. You don't know if you will actually be adding one of the expert cards or not, but you may be. Each one of these also has some other actions that we did not go over previously, and I'm going to leave those for you to find out on your own if you decide to play M.O.R.P.H.O. And that's it, everybody. That is the basics of M.O.R.P.H.O. Let's go ahead and come up from the table, and I'm going to give you my final thoughts on this game. All right, everybody, so we're back up from the table, having just taken a look at the social deduction card game M.O.R.P.H.O., and I'm going to give you my final thoughts on the game. If you are somebody who enjoys social deduction card games like Coup, then I think M.O.R.P.H.O. is probably going to be a game you want to take a look at for sure. I like the fact that we can play all the way up to 9 players. We can play all the way down to 3 players. That is a wide level of player count variability. I like that the base game is good, and that if you add in the expert level cards, there's more playability there because you're not going to be throwing them all in all at once. You're going to possibly randomly put in some of those expert level cards. And they're definitely some of them quite a bit more difficult to achieve than the base level missions on the other cards. So I think it's got a lot of replayability if social deduction card games are your type of game. Now, if social deduction card games are not your kind of game, I don't think this game is probably going to win you over. It doesn't do anything drastically different or new in the area of those style of games. At least not enough that I think is going to just grab somebody who's never really enjoyed social deduction card games to begin with. But if you're on the fence, if you sometimes want to play a social deduction game, or they're not your favorite, but you got friends who do enjoy them, then I think that this could be a nice small game to add to your collection so that you can play it with those friends who do enjoy those styles of games. And I think it's going to be a little bit more fun than some of the other ones that are already out there. I did go ahead and give my little bit of critique during the review earlier, in that I don't think the rule book got the level of editing that it needed. It looks good. It just doesn't read great all the time. There are definitely things that are a little confusing when you're reading them grammatically. But overall, you can read the book. You can understand how to play the game. So yeah, I think it's a good game. I think it's enjoyable. Social deduction games aren't my personal favorite, but again, high player count, which I love playing with a lot of friends. The fact that it's only a 20-minute game also is a great addition. So I think I'm going to keep a hold of M.O.R.P.H.O. in my collection for a while so that I can play it with more friends and find out if it's going to stand the test of time for me and my players. So there you have it. There's my final review. If you like social deduction card games, definitely check it out. If you're on the fence, maybe wait and see if one of your friends grab a copy. But if you got a lot of players and you're looking for something just to fill those 20-30 minutes in between maybe some other games, or maybe for a short game night, then I think you might want to go ahead and give M.O.R.P.H.O. a try. Everybody, thanks for watching. I hope the video helped and that you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a like and subscribe maybe to the channel. Check out all the other great videos that we're putting out. We put out 1, 2, sometimes 3 videos a day here at Tabletop Gaming Guild. So hopefully you'll find something that you'll enjoy and will help you in playing your games. And until we talk again, everybody, keep on playing games.